You're listening to the GamesIndustry.biz Microcast. I'm James Batchelor, and joining me this week is...
It's Chris Dring, obviously.
It's Chris Dring, and
as I am
you
in my
may
seat.
even be able to see us.
Oh,
We're attempting video podcasts, or video microcasts going forward, so you'll be able to watch this and listen to this if you are a glutton for punishment.
Listen to some
Chris, how are you doing? You're looking nice 30s. And not blurry.
I've got my webcam out. I've got the speakers out. I just need some new headphones, and I've got the full podcast experience. Maybe I can. Yeah, I like this. We did this during. This is the thing. Like, all this equipment we've had since the pandemic, because we did all these online video webinars and events and so forth, and then they've slowly been stuck in a drawer ever since. I think it's good. Let's get it out. Let's use the tools at our disposal.
Only thing I haven't got is the massive studio lights that they sent to us. Those are in the garage. Yeah. Instead, I've got this very, very clever invention called a window.
Yeah, beforehand, because the way my room was set up, the window was behind me, and I needed those lights. But now, here we are. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, I do have those lights. I've got them down there. Maybe I should set them up next.
Maybe you should set them up.
There's only so much lighting can do.
All of this is for naught, obviously, if you're listening to the audio version as usual, in which case you probably know the drill by now. This is the Microcast. We're going to be going through some of the biggest stories from the past week in a relatively short amount of time to keep this nice and digestible for your busy schedules. Going to start with the SAG-AFTRA deal, between the voice acting union, the Actors Union, and the AI voice tech Replica Studios. They announced an AI voice agreement that would allow the use of licensed voices in video game development and other interactive media projects, both in the pre-production stages, but even right up to final release. Now, this is the first time there's been a deal specifically for AI voice acting in video games. The Union and Replica Studios both say the aim is to kind of create a precedent for an ethical use of AI in video games. Perhaps inevitably, voice actors are not pleased about this. Vast majority of voice actors that have kind of spoken out about this, I've seen on social media and so forth, are, I won't read specific complaints because they're all along the lines of, this is a bad idea, and I don't know anyone that was actually consulted on this. SAG-AFTRA has said this was voted, approved by all its members that were actually consulted. There's a lot of, who, because we don't know anyone that has been consulted on this. But the deal is there. The point more, rather than whether or not this this deal is happening, because the deal is happening, it's the prospect of voice acting in video games. Now, we're going to be touching on AI a lot over the weeks, I imagine, throughout the year. Voice acting is one area I personally think AI is not a good use for it. I think anything creative, anything that requires a human element, I don't understand how a computer can act and convey emotion in the way that a human being can, because as far as I'm aware, it can't. Chris, your thoughts on AI voice acting and the impact of this deal?
Well, I mean, I don't have too many views on it. It's really complicated, and it's interesting. For the first time ever, because I had a typo in an article the other week, somebody accused the article of being AI generated. So basically, I've realised that people now think if something's not good or there's a mistake in something, it must have been AI that did it. So I like the idea that the computers are more, at the moment, we're in a world where the AI tech is more at fault than the human in perception. It genuinely was my typo. That was my mistake. It was not AI written piece of work. But the thing is, AI, clearly workers don't like it and gamers don't. Some gamers don't like it at the minute. But we're living in a really different economy to where we were a few years ago, where actually I don't think the power at the moment is with workers in that regard. Games companies are fighting for survival, and if AI tech allows them to do things a little bit cheaply, and even if the quality's not quite there but is actually pretty good, you should expect certain games companies anyway, particularly ones that are fighting for survival, they're just not going to listen and they're going to do it. That's my fear, or expectation, I guess. But I don't really. It's a really complicated thing, because often people talk about AI as replacing sort of the tedious jobs, the jobs that nobody really wants to do. But I'm actually worried about that, because the tedious jobs is where people learn their craft. Right? It's where they learn how to. James, you and I both started on MCV magazine, and our first job was doing things like a release schedule and uh, just compiling tweets, and it was really like there was some creative. We would rewrite press releases for the recommended sections, really sort of very unread and basic parts of the magazine. But that's how we learn. That's how we learnt the markets, how we learnt the traders, how we built our contacts up, and then we eventually leveled up. It was a very thing in an AI world. If MCV was still doing that stuff, and it isn't, but if the AI world, you just get AI to sort out your race schedule for you, right? You get AI to rewrite those press releases and have someone just tidy it up. And I think and although you go, oh, those are tedious jobs, nobody really wants those jobs, but those are the jobs that teach us how to do those jobs. And that's the bit that worries me a little bit about AI and how it impacts of people coming into the workplace. But as I say, I think games companies are going to start adopting it quite aggressively, particularly those that are needing to find ways, because at the moment the games industry isn't profitable enough, right? Some of these companies just aren't profitable enough, and they need to start making money, and they need to start being mindful of their costs. And if AI helps them with their costs, then I expect a bunch of them to use it.
I think the issue with AI is there's an inevitability to AI compared with all the other, quote unquote disruptive tech that we've seen in the last few years. Like the AI, the rise of AI, or kind of the popularization of AI, is following off the back of the blockchain, the metaverse, the NFTs, and all those, and like all these other kind of big tech words, buzzwords that everyone got very excited about, poured a lot of money into, and actually didn't amount to anything. AI is, I think, it's entering a very cynical world because of what happened with those technologies. But the difference here is this one, the AI, there are going to be people that use it. Like, regardless of whether or not you want them to, there will be people that use it. And it's going to have wider implications for the rest of the industry. It's going to have wider, applications than those previous ones I mentioned. This is not just in games industry, this is all industry. So I listen to, in my spare time, I listen to a lot of kind of writing podcasts, podcasts about kind of self-publishing and indie publishing, in the kind of the fiction and non-fiction space. And a lot of them, a lot of the hosts are it's too late to say you don't want to use AI or you don't want AI to take off. It is taking off. It's up to you whether or not you want to use it or whether or not you want to get behind it. But there is a danger of being left behind. And this is not being said by the people who are invested in AI and are going to become profitable on it becoming big. These are people who are there are uses for it. There are some ways you can use it ethically to kind of help you and make your processes easier, versus using it to replace work, etc. Point being, the video games industry and video games companies are going to be having exactly the same sort of conversation. AI is going to happen, and AI is going to be a factor of games development and all different parts of the games industry. It's whether or not it's finding the right way to use it. Way too big a topic to go into on a microcast, but I actually saw an argument, I think it was around this voice acting thing, that the moment you use AI for creative stuff, you were saying earlier, that AI is going to replace the menial kind of tasks and the more labour-intensive tasks and free up people for creativity. There's the fear actually that it's going to be the opposite way, that AI is going to be used for the more creative roles, which will leave humans to do the manual labour, because that is one thing that that AI can't do. Obviously, that's not
broader global, yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't. For me, I think yes. My thing is, it doesn't. I say my thing is all about the learning curve, right? Because your AI, you can get AI to write you a novel, but it will be a derivative novel based on other novels that are out there. You can't really. People have their own experiences and conveying those experiences and emotions, and the computer can't do that because they've not had any, right? But that if somebody just wants to go, I'm going to knock out a very nice basic murder mystery novel. You're like, well, actually, no, the computer can do that for us, and that's where I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit. But I don't know. I've got this thing, this is a really crude thing to say. I apologise, but a long time ago, we learned as a human race we can now make babies without having to have sex, right? And then you might have to cut all this out, but it turned out we quite liked the sex bit. So we didn't, right? So we do it if we have to, if there's a situation where that needs to happen. But broadly speaking, we make babies the same way we always make babies. And I like to think we like creating stuff. We like making things. So the idea that we would use technology to do the bits that we actually like doing feels weird to me. Surely we'd be using it for the stuff that we don't like doing. And I think, we can use it to write this novel, but why? We like writing novels, and I hope to think that is the I know that money ends up driving things as well, but I like to think that's the way that we go as well. But it's money that will ultimately drive the industry towards adopting some of these AI tech. And I'm a little, let's be. I was just thinking about this, right? Because we're doing this on video for the first time. We may or may not put this out as a video as the first one because we yet to have the design team are slightly backed up. They haven't yet done our little intro sting for this video. So we may put it out without an intro sting. We may wait for the intro sting. We may never put it out at all. If we had AI, if we used AI, we probably could have got it made up this morning. So speed is another thing. And when your competitors are being faster and doing more because they've been able to use AI effectively, problem is it's just not good enough at the moment. So I don't. Yeah. We wouldn't do it.
Equally, putting this up will rely on whether or not our editor is free to edit a video podcast today. Like if we don't have an AI that can just stick this together and put it up on YouTube for us. It's entirely
my metaphor.
Last point I'll say on AI, just kind of adding to what you were saying about like kind of money's going to drive this in terms of there's going to be money in AI stuff and companies are going to want to profit on that. But also my point about inevitability. Steam has revised its review policies and said that it's basically going to enable the vast majority of games that use AI in some way are going to be released on Steam. Valve is going to split AI content into two categories going forwards. It's going to be pre-generated, so any kind of content, art, code, sound, etc., that is created with the help of AI tools during development, and then live generated, which is any kind of content that's created with the help of AI tools while the game is running. But basically, they've revised their policies in a way that means that the vast majority of AI games, whether those are games that are developed with AI tools or use AI tools in how you play them, are going to be released on Steam. That for me speaks to the inevitability. Like the largest PC games marketplace is saying, well, there's going to be enough of these that we should allow these to be released on the market.
Well, you need to listen to what Microsoft is saying. They believe that in the future, people will make video games who have no experience they don't know how to program, who are not artists. And they can sit there, have an idea for a game and put it into a system, and the system makes the game for them, right? And this is the idea of and it's quite terrifying for those who've learned all these, skilled up and got these abilities. But it's if you look at the music industry and look at TV and film and that stuff, that anyone can pick up a camera now, pick up a phone and start making films, and anyone can sort of just get a beat and start putting some music together. It's so easy, but games still isn't easy. It's really difficult. And the idea is AI is a way of breaking down those barriers. And if all these people, these hobbyists are making games now, then the stores might want to feature them, and so it's you expect that to be something that you hear from particularly Microsoft as we move into GDC.
And a segue then from this to another story that I wanted to talk about this morning. I was going to kind of leave it till last, which is daft because it's probably going to be a larger discussion, but Brendan Sinclair, our managing editor, did a great interview with the head of publishing at Nacon, Benoit Clerc, who was talking about the challenges that mid-tier publishers face, and one of the big ones was he said that there are too many games on the market. So the exact quote was, "There are too many games currently on the market. We're seeing today the results of investment made after COVID, where the market was bursting and every game was making a lot of money, so there were a lot of investments being made. This is 2 or 3 years after that, so the games we're seeing now on the market were financed in that time, and there are simply too many for customers to be able to play them. When you look at Steam some days, there are 50 or 60 games released in one day only, so it's more difficult to get enough traction to expose a game. We're seeing releases that are without a day one, to use the old retail expression, without any exposure of a title that has been properly marketed." So he was, and the full interview's up on the site. He was talking about the fact that there are so many games on the market. I think the stat that's going around, 14,000 games released on Steam alone last year. The kind of broad question would be, are there too many games? And that is one that we could fill a whole podcast with, let alone a microcast. I am actually back and forth on this, but Chris, I know you've got a particular thought on this.
Well, in terms of a lot of those 14,000 are hobbyists and people who are making games for fun and that kind of stuff. And in that sense, there isn't too many games. And there can never be too many games. The form of artistic expression, video games, everyone should be able to make one and put that out there, and it's wonderful. I think a better stat is, I love looking at the Nintendo Switch site. You go on the Nintendo Switch eShop, right? and you put on a Nintendo 3DS, shall we say, right? There are 1,789 games on the Nintendo 3DS eShop, right? So that's the previous Nintendo console that people actually bought as just under 1,800 things. Nintendo Switch, 11,206, right? And so you're looking at a very big. You're looking at a huge surge in games. Not just, yes, Steam has ridiculous numbers, but even just looking at console, and what you're talking about there, and it's what the Nacon guy's talking about, is completely. He's actually kind of right. There was a huge surge in games that were greenlit, studios that were set up, that were working on projects from the peak of the pandemic or sort of even just before, that have now come into market. And although these may not be AAA mega titles, they're all sort of AA. Some of them are sort of creeping on AAA. So the market's going to. So these stores are saturated, and of that type of stuff. So from a business perspective, if you're Nacon, if you're Team 17, if you're Devolver Digital, you're now competing. You're those sort of games. I'm not talking hobbyist games. I'm not even talking the top end sort of mega games. Just those sort of games. There is so much, and there isn't room for them all in a market where growth is slow. Look at the growth numbers we did. So in the UK, sales are up 2.5%, 2%. In Europe, sales are up less than 2%. So there is growth in the games industry, but not huge growth. And so you've got this situation where there's more games coming to market. Growth is slow. We're post-pandemic, so engagement is down. And there is a lot of games. And I think the release schedule will start to go back a little bit, particularly of those middle AA sort of to AAA sort of level games. I think we'll start seeing a drop in those, possibly in a couple of years' time. I think that's the thing everyone talks about. We're looking at 2 years of pain in the games industry, and I will be doing a piece on this because I have spoken to a lot of CEOs lately to get their views on what's happening. Part of that is that there are too many games. It's not the only problem, but there is too many games. And when I say as I say, I don't mean there's too many people making games for fun. You can never have enough of those, and there's too many AAA mega titles. There really isn't actually. But of everything that's sort of, the sort of those sort of, the sort of games I mean, the games that indie publishers are publishing that everyone was making at one point, everyone's leveled up to make. A lot of those AAA studio, the Immortals of Aviums of the world, the Callisto Protocols, those are the sort of the early bunch of those that we're starting to see. We're going to see a lot more of those in a couple of years, and I think a lot of those aren't going to work.
No. Well, I mean, Immortals of Avium, as an example, like the sales just did not meet the expectations. Like it's a shame. Like it's a brand new IP, really kind of polished, bordering on that kind of AAA quality, if not can be argued as a AAA game, and really struggled because again, came out just before this wave of big games and anticipated games. Like it's hard. The sentiment of there are too many games is something I see particularly common around the media, like journalists and so forth, because or indeed anyone who's trying to monitor and keep up with the industry, because it's really hard to not just keep up with what's being released, but obviously play them, and even just to sample them. Like it's impossible to play all of the games that everyone is talking about, all the games that have become successful, so you have a full understanding of what's out there on the market, what's been done, what hasn't been done, what's been disruptive. It's impossible to do that because there's so many games. And I until very recently was very much there are too many games because I can't play them. It's almost quite a tunnel vision. Like if I can't play everything big, then there are too many games. But then you look at the other forms of entertainment. Is there too much music? Are there too many books?
Well, there are. Yes, but also you need to think about it. I think there's two different arguments here. Is there too many books? Too much music? Too much video, TV from the perspective of an art form? No. I think it's wonderful, and that's how it's through new content and people making stuff that opens up new markets. And so even from a business perspective, it has its points to it. But we're being very specific. When a company like Nacon is saying there's too many games, they're talking about it from their perspective. The types of games they make are competing in a space where there's just too many titles, and I think that's true. So I think there's slightly different. I think when people say too many games, it's a very broad statement. I think you can never have enough games. I think more games for more people. I'm just going to play my Nintendo ones, but regardless, more games for more people is great. But and more people making stuff is great, and being creative is great. It's just if you're a mid-tier publisher at the moment trying to survive, and even we talked about, you mentioned Immortals of Avium. It's an EA game, right? You know, it's even difficult for these big companies. Immortals of Avium actually charted higher than Forza Motorsport in the charts, right? And that's a Microsoft game. Okay, that's a different situation, I think. But regardless, you've got plenty of examples, even the big companies who are trying to do something new and innovative, who are competing in a market with lots and lots and lots of people trying to do something new and innovative. And when you launch Immortals of Avium at the same time, which, to be fair, didn't review incredibly well, but when launched up against Baldur's Gate 3, came on the back of Diablo, and you've got those games sucking up a lot of time and money out of the market, and that's the thing, time. Like, in an engagement economy, you're competing for time, and time is finite. In theory, money goes up, but time doesn't. And if you can't find a way to get your game to fit in, then or to separate, or then it's just tough from a business perspective. As I say, I think from an art form, more the merrier.
I think that's kind of a nice note to end on, and we are relatively micro, so I'm going to wrap us up there. Thank you so much for joining us, particularly if you're able to watch this. Thank you so much for watching and putting up with our faces for the last 20 minutes. Chris, thank you so much for joining me as usual.
Oh, it's a pleasure, James. I love doing these.
These are good fun. Great way to start the week. You can, as always, find all previous episodes of the Microcast, the podcast, and our various spin-offs on the same GamesIndustry.biz podcast feed on the podcasting platform of your choice. I'm saying the word podcasting a lot, but that's just the nature of this plug. We will hopefully be bringing more Microcasts to our YouTube channel. Yes, GI has a YouTube channel, and you can obviously find more news, insight, and analysis into the world behind video games at GamesIndustry.biz.